So he gets pulled back to command. They assign him to like a mixed match unit of a bunch of random squads because they have a certain mission that they want him to do. And they've gone out and they've set up a perimeter. And if you don't know a security perimeter, it's basically 360-degree security perimeter where you have guns pointed to the outside, and you have usually the leadership will be in the center of the perimeter, and there'll be small teams kind of out in the perimeter making up the perimeter. So that's the position that they're in. He's got these random squads that he's never worked with before, and he's in charge of them. Again, this is something where, you know, we did have to work with Iraqis on my last deployment, but oftentimes you're working with other SEALs. These are the guys you know them really well. You know everything they're going to do, and here you are getting thrown into a combat environment on a very dangerous patrol into enemy territory that you don't know very well, and you got a bunch of guys that you never worked with before. So as he's in that perimeter, he's given the guys some instructions about something called challenge and reply. So it's a way of confirming, because it's pitch black. These guys don't have night vision. It's pitch black. He says, hey, if you hear someone coming, you can issue the challenge for a number sum of 10, which is like if I say echo, or if I hear you coming and I say 7, you would respond 3. If I say 4, you would respond 6. So they've passed that word. If you hear noise, you need a challenge, do that challenge and reply. So he's out there, and he's crawling towards one of the little elements on the outside of the perimeter so he can find out, check in with them, see if they've seen anything, see if they heard anything. And here we go. Back to the book. Shh was his only warning to the others. I came to a complete rest, waiting for someone to issue the challenge. The seconds ticked on, but I heard no sound. I began to sense there was a problem. The next sound was the bolt and firing pin of a rifle sliding forward in response to a pulled trigger. Both fell forward on an empty chamber. Terrified, I realized that I should be dead, that the rifleman meant to nail me, no questions asked. Only his earlier error in not having chambered a round saved me. Don't shoot, I shouted in horror. It's the lieutenant. But I was too late to stop the momentum of events. I heard a panicky remark from the midst of the group. Get the bastards. Then a round was chambered. As I flung myself at the sound, 15 feet is not far to sprint, but the journey seemed endless. I threw myself parallel to the ground and lunged in the dark figure appearing before my eyes. As I launched through the air, I felt rounds switch by my outstretched body, 9 or 10 bullets burning out of the barrel of the automatic weapon. My arms circled the knees of the firer, bringing him down in a heap. I pushed the hot barrel skyward as the last of the rounds exited the weapon. Although I had pinned the firer, I had also to think about the 2 other men with him. I yelled out, "Don't shoot, you son of a bitch, it's the platoon leader." There was no further firing. Fighting my rage, I tried to focus my thoughts. We were in deep trouble. Don't shoot, don't shoot, don't shoot. Hold your fire, I shouted across the perimeter. I could hear nervous chatter from all around, so he barely escaped. He gets the guys to stop. He doesn't even really, he's mad, but he's basically taking responsibility in being in this situation in the first place. So he says to the guys that were there, he says, I admonished all 3 men to challenge correctly, speaking to them as if I were giving classroom instructions to a bunch of eager, if not very bright students. I surprised myself with my calmness. It was when I moved back to my position that the greatest struggle within me began. Perhaps it was triggered by the decision I had to make. By the book, I had shifted our positions. By the book, I should have shifted our positions. We were a reconnaissance patrol. We were badly outnumbered by the enemy and had compromised our position with all the shooting and shouting. There were good reasons for moving. On the other hand, it was pitch black night. If the enemy was close enough to get an immediate fix on us, he was close enough to hit us before we could move. Even if he wasn't close, further stumbling around in the darkness might worsen our predicament. Moreover, to effect the move meant I would have to move around to regroup the dispersed men. This was the point that weighed most heavily on my mind. I no longer had the heart for it. I had come within an inch of being killed, shot by one of my own men on the side of an ink-black mountain in the middle of nowhere. I knew the men were ready to shoot anything that moved, and I didn't want to give them a target. I should have been ashamed of myself. I was too afraid to move, to implement what was probably the best course of action for my men and my mission. I couldn't do it. Naked fear stripped me of all shame or guilt. Fear was all I knew, and I didn't want to move. A few moments earlier, I had been an effective platoon leader doing his job. Now I could actually feel my chest throbbing against the dirt where I lay. I wanted to bury my face in my hands. I wanted to be like the little boy I used to be, hiding from the darkness by putting his head under the covers. I could not think. My body began to tremble, then shiver, then shake uncontrollably. My God, I was going to die. I could not possibly live through the night. If anyone heard my breathing, I was sure you'd kill me. Death was everywhere. I sensed it, felt it lying down beside me. I didn't want to die, but death was there, cold and clammy, reaching for me with his icy touch. My pulse pounded in my ears, and I felt nauseous. I almost threw up. The passing minutes, hours, whatever units of time exist in a nightmare brought no relief. The fear only worsened. I would not live through the night. I was sure of it. Would the dying hurt, I wondered? Would I disappear into nothingness? When I first went prone, trying to press myself into the ground, I fell close to an anthill. A few of the ant scouts immediately began a reconnaissance of my body, but it was not until the ants' legions were called forward that I noticed them. As I lay shaking on the ground, thousands of ants began trooping over me, adding to the crawling feeling on my flesh. Still, I did not move, for to move, I knew, would put me in the embrace of death. So I lay there where I was, heart pounding, skin sweating, ears throbbing, while an army of ants probed and pricked at my will. Sometime later, that night, the rains came in a torrential downpour that sent a stream gushing down the mountainside at us. I still didn't move. My night of terror was not over yet. And when the rain stopped after a few hours, I still lay in the ooze and slime. First light brought a sense of recovery. Darkness was ending, and I was still alive. Only then did the beating of my heart slow. I loosened my belt, reached down into the soggy elastic of my undershorts, and wiped out a streak of drowned ants. The rains had swept them over my body, where they had become trapped and they had drowned. As I removed their dead bodies, thousands of them, I seemed to rid myself of my fixation with death. I had lived through the night, vulnerable as I was. The ants had died, eminently adaptable as they were. Somehow, the irony of it reassured me. One died when it was time to die. Apparently, it was not my time. As dawn broke, I pulled myself together, gathered up my makeshift patrol, and moved back toward the ranger camp. That night on the mountain, instead of engaging the enemy, I had come to grips with my own mortality. That night, I had been a terrible platoon leader. But perhaps I would be a better one thereafter because of it. A little bit of an intense evening for Lieutenant McDonough. Unbelievable.